So Web3 culture can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but for me, I always talk about the ethos and values of Web3. And so two primary things, sovereignty and ownership. We need to own our own things. And what that looks like, I am open to interpretation and also experiments and co-ownership, experiments and collective ownership, experiments and even individual ownership, and what does ownership actually mean? Because if we look at indigenous folks or folks from the African diaspora, ownership can feel and look very different than the Western world and their very problematic notion of ownership.
Hi everyone, I'm super excited to bring you another episode of NEWFORUM featuring Natalie Crue. She's a culture producer, hip-hop connoisseur, and Web3 evangelist, and so much more. And I cannot wait to hear all about that on this episode of NEWFORUM. She's super passionate about social impact and music in Web3. And as always, NEWFORUM is a community podcast that invites purpose-driven creators, visionaries, developers, and investors to spark accessible and meaningful conversations on topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3. Natalie, welcome to NEWFORUM.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here with you and the NEWFORUM community. I'm super excited, finally. So, yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So my first question would be, tell us about you, your background, and how your work in Web3 began.
We'll be here all day. Welcome to the 85-hour NEWFORUM podcast. So I, again, probably have a bio longer than or taller than the Empire State Building, and which is in New York City for those of you who've never been there. I spent probably most of my life traversing various sectors and industries and verticals because I'm a person who likes to do way too much. And so a lot of my work is social impact centric, super into like music and hip hop culture and elevating and amplifying practitioners across the globe, and also like cultivating communities and kind of nurturing folks in these Web3 spaces. And so I've spent a lot of time here in Web3 before it was called Web3. I was in crypto circa 2013, but it was in, I would say, 2016, 17, where my friends Vandal and DJ Lethal Skills onboarded me into like Web3 and the ecosystem called the blockchain. And here I am many years later, still cultivating community and building all the things and doing too much.
Yeah, thank you so much, I guess, for being a part of those pioneers, because you were there before we coined the term, I guess, Web3 and where it is now. And so, you touched a bit about music. So my next question would be like, how do you see Web3 impacting traditional music industry?
I mean, there's two things. I think, at least for my peers and I know that I can speak for many of you who will be, well, you better be tuning into this podcast / session. So I think that, at least for myself, I'm not trying to like buck against these systems. I'm utilizing some radical imagination to build something different from the places that I've come from and many of my peers have. So I envision a music ecosystem where we can pay artists fairly, where we can pay builders like myself fairly. Some of us are kind of left to fend for ourselves. And so I also envision a ecosystem where we can build the things that we've imagined, but may have not been possible because of the types of obstacles that many artists and creatives and builders and all the folks that exist in the music industry often face. And so I have often thought about, what does that actually look like, and how can we build these spaces? What does it look like to build up the infrastructure and ecosystem in a way that we are centering ourselves as people and the human experience, and also equity? And so I don't think, at least in my opinion, the music industry will ever change. It's operated in its current state for decades, if not hundreds of years. And so I think it's best, at least for me, to focus my energy on building things that actually make sense and spending my energy wisely. And so that's what I'll say to that.
I'm curious to know if there are any like examples of Web3 projects or platforms that you would say are successfully implementing some of these ethos or ideas or desires that you have. Maybe an example would be like even fair creator compensation when it comes to maybe music, if we want to go there, or just like
Yeah, I would say DAO Records, in my opinion, who's run by my good friend Vandal. For a long time, he and Skills were out there. I think, yeah, Skills is still in Malaysia, but Vandal was also there for a second. And while he was there, he thought about many of the same things that I've been thinking about for many years. And he built DAO Records, the first record label on the blockchain. And it was a collective of folks who had a bunch of different skills, and he wanted to amplify artists and figure out ways to pay them fairly and equitably. And so he built DAO Records and has been able to like onboard some incredible musicians from across the globe. Like Maja One is, I think, head of A&R there. She's a incredible, I'm going to say it, the queen of hip hop in Singapore and across Southeast Asia, at least one of them. And so he's brought a lot of folks together because of that. There's also there's M&A, which is a streaming platform that I also used to work with. Lethal Skills heads community and all the things over there, and they pay artists up to 10 cents, while competitors in traditional music markets will pay 0.00000003 cents. And also Metaverse Music Festival, which we kind of came together, a group of people, to build this decentralized music festival. It was, I'm going to say, a few years ago, and then you have a whole horde of new kind of folks popping in. And so we built Metaverse Music Festival with the idea of like, how can we bring folks together? How can we like build something different? And that was it. And so there's so many other projects I could talk about. Counterparty, which, looking at the whole entire scope of the space and ecosystem, they've continued the ethos like rain, sleet, or snow. And there are a bunch of people who actually believe in crypto and like Web3, and Counterparty's rooted in like Bitcoin culture and that whole community. And so Counterparty and Skrilla and the whole musician community, K Mayfield over there, they're really about that life. So yeah.
The joy in your voice as you're explaining and talking about this, I think, is super contagious, and shows how passionate you are about your work and the purpose-driven aspect of it. And we're all about that. And you keep saying like you're all over the place, but I mean, honestly, I don't blame you, because you have the ability to inspire different projects, right? And you are passionate about your work, so why not? So I think what you're doing is super diverse and versatile. And I also wanted to ask, like, how do you see the use of NFTs impacting traditional industry such as music and art?
I would kind of scroll back a little bit. I would also say, before like I jump into this question, is that for me, and growing up, like, you had to be like this one thing, like whatever that is, you had to be that one thing. And I was always a multi-hyphenate. I always did a lot of different things. I liked playing baseball, but I also liked going to tap dance. And so like, and then my mom would take me so many different hobbies and things. And I liked art, I liked drawing. And so I can't really draw, just don't ask. And so and so I liked all the things. And growing up as an adult, I also did all the things all the time. And so I'm so passionate and fueled by the things happening in the space. I'm equally disenchanted, but we can get to that later. However, the people that I'm around, like Kane and Low Sleazy from Blockchain Gospel, and Kane from Neighborhood Jewelry, and like all these Counterparty folks, and like my people, like every day, like they're inspiring me and pushing me to like do incredible things and helping me build the things and Web3 that I want to build, and Cas Vegas, and like all these people, like it just super fuel me. It's like diesel it's like diesel fuel. I see people building new things and getting new ideas, like Lottie Day and like TK with Eternal Gardens, and I see all these people like building these things. They're solving from Black Web3, and so or Afropolitan, like all these people like in Web3 that I'm meeting, and with all these like bright and brilliant ideas, and they're actually building the things, especially people that look like ourselves and folks from the global South. And like it's just every day it's like something new, and like I just, yeah. And so it's incredible, like learning something every day. I'll pause for a second and say that to your question, as far as NFTs go, how does that affect the traditional music industry? For a very long time, people like Skrilla, who I consider, and Vandal, were really thinking about what are some new things we can do with these digital tokens. And then you had folks like Black Dave come in and say, what are the new use cases? How can we build on this? What are the new ways we can interact with technologies? Or BT, who's a godfather of trance, the same thing. He's like a baby genius with creative coding. And so I see all these people being able to create experiences for the people that love their music, not just fans or audiences, but participants in their creative ecosystem. So the way that we interact with people, the way that we invite people in to participate with our music, and it's not just buy my merch, it's also like, come into my community, can we have conversations? Or Emily Lazar is inviting her fans to her shows and you get percentage off of merch. Like, all these experiences are being created by people across this like blockchain ecosystem. People are having parties like Art Basel, like Zoratopia with Latasha. And so all these things become much more real and less transactional, in my opinion, in comparison to the traditional music industry. And I find it very it's enlightening how people are thinking about the technology here and how they want to participate. And so for me, also, I see a lot of big record labels coming into the space and, like, I'm to keep it funky, like abusing the technology, engaging in cash grabs, picking up people from the space so they have like some leverage, and then they run off with the bag when things get hard or they get challenged. And so like I also see us starting to gravitate towards some of these bigger like music industry players, when I feel like we should focus on the people who have been here, support the people who have been here, fund the people that have been here. And it's just very disenchanting to me because I'm in meetings with these people and they're blatantly saying, I don't believe in this technology, I don't care about the values and ethos. And I'm like, why don't you go back to Web2, bro? Like and so it's very disenchanting. However, we have the opportunity to challenge these systems. I don't care if you're in fashion or film or like music or name any industry anywhere on the globe. Like, we have the opportunity right now, and the gap is getting much wider as I speak, to challenge and buck up against these systems and to invite folks in so they can have real equity, have real ownership, have real power, and also power share amongst each other. However, that gap it's widening and closing at the same damn time. So yeah.
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, that's deep, and it's the truth. The ownership aspect is really important, regarding the blockchain and how it's really empowered creators. I remember perhaps a couple of months ago, there was this trend about NFT royalties, like a bunch of opinions, right, going on. And I was like scrolling through the Twitter and I'm just like, okay, everybody kind of had an opinion. And I'm curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on like creator royalties, NFT royalties, and how perhaps artists can navigate this much better?
Ultimately, what I believe is that artists, creators, and the people who are participating in this ecosystem should be able to dictate the terms in which their NFTs or projects are kind of pushed out, and like how they interact with people. And that interaction is like, I want to retain 10% royalty. So every time you buy my NFT, I get that 10% of whatever the price is back. And that's my position, to be able to dictate like what that is, not the platform, not these tools, not people who have like over elevated and like manufactured hype around themselves. It's the people who are participating in the space that should be able to dictate that. If you're like in a community of like some metaverse, you should be able to dictate the terms in which you all participate and what the community values actually are, because yay, decentralization, but we also have to like be amongst each other, and humans are humans. Like, so we have to still dictate and have some collective intelligence, gathering around what it actually means to be in community with each other, and we have to dictate that. So in terms of royalties, the platforms that are like 0% royalties and collectors that are pushing that line too, I have to ask like why they're actually here when the space in its purest form is really about ownership and sovereignty. And if you don't actually believe that, I'm always going to say like, why are you in Web3, bro? Like, so it's just, that whole conversation was very disconcerting, to say the least. So yeah.
We need a meme that says why are you in Web3, bro? I like that. I wonder what the
I got you.
yeah, I wonder what the image or the visual would be. Maybe we need to take that on.
Any new forum community folks, you want to create a meme, I got you.
Yeah, I think we need one for that. No, those are really valid points. And I know that you're also big on curation. You're a
Yeah.
curator yourself. And so I'm curious to know, like, would you say, because you touched a bit about collectors, and when I think about collectors in Web3, then I mean collectors, I sort of think about curators as well, right? Because it kind of, you curate or you collect in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so correct me.
Continue.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how do curators or collectors kind of impact the fairness when it comes to creator royalties or NFT royalties? Like pretty much everything you said, how do they help? I know that in Web3, we're trying to remove the middleman, kind of. But like you said, we still humans, right? And sometimes we still need, we need that. Curators are still sort of the middle people in a way in Web3, right? But I'm just wondering how they impact this whole process.
There's a woman, her name is Deepa Iyer, and I'll send you the link after this sometime. And she has this kind of circular chart that kind of depicts all the roles that people play within social justice spaces or movements. Deepa, if you're listening to this, I probably butchered that. But so the same thing. So you have the caregivers, you have people that are storytellers, you have people that weave people together, you have people that are frontliners, the people that always respond to like whatever's happening. And there's a bunch of other roles around the circle that I never can always remember. And so in Web3, it's the same thing. Like for myself, like I'm not just like a curator or somebody who provides opportunities for artists or connects the dots for people. Like I'm also like a caregiver. People like consider me like their motherly figure in like Web3. Somebody called me the baby D of Web3, which is funny. If you know the reference, then you know. And so we all play one or more roles. I would say most of us have been here for a long time, play multiple roles, whether we like it or not. And so we have a responsibility, in my opinion, as curators or people who are hyper visible, although I like to be behind the scenes. I don't enjoy that at all. And so like I know that the power that I bring with myself, I know what I bring to the table, I know the energy that I'm bringing into every room that I walk into, virtually or not. And so it's, for me, it's my responsibility to advocate for the values and ethos of the space and make sure that we're keeping those intact. Otherwise, all of us won't be here. Like it'll be corporatized and sold to the highest bidder. We won't be here, and all the stuff we built so many years will eventually like evaporate. This is what the over commodification of industries has happened since time and continuum. And so I know that I have to advocate in these rooms for the protection of royalties, the equity that Black and brown folks, whether you come from like Ethiopia, Somalia, Boston, San Francisco, that you need to be in those rooms, you need to be seen, and we need to be on these stages and in these places. And it's, if you're not here to utilize the power that you've kind of like harnessed in this space, your visibility, I also have to ask you, why are you here, bro? Like what? It's such, as a curator, and it's even our existence here in like Web3 with its political kind of underpinnings, our existence here is political. And so why aren't you using your voice or your keyboard? Because I know some of y'all never leave your house. I am people. Advocate for these things, ownership, sovereignty, like all these things that this space is supposed to be about. So I know that was a long answer, but there it is.
It's a wonderful answer. We're all learning kind of as we go. And so when you allow people to think and process and think for themselves and give them insights, right? And also insights and learnings from your experience, like from the beginning of time, Web3 time, you really care about what you're doing, and it just shows in everything you say. So I'd like to know, what are you working on currently that you're super excited about? A project, maybe a partnership, something that you're like excited.
I'm like, what am I not working on today? I'm actually always contributing to a bunch of DAOs. However, like Radar, which what I say they do is a future forecasting or trend casting. They take a lot of collective intelligence from their community, and they're building some really incredible like reports around futures and that whole like sector. They're really shifting, like they're an example of like in Web3 what it means to like look at the sector or the industry that you're in and say, hey, how do we turn this on its head, or how do we make this ours, or how do we utilize the kind of collective intelligence of people we are in community with and really like shift the scales, seismic shifts. And so I love working with like Fancy and like all these people, and I hope to get like more immersed into that. I also do a lot of research at Water and Music, just wrapping up a research project around fan journeys. Shout out to Kristen from and so but primarily like my dream child, as I call it, is this very robust fund for Web3 creators and piloting a UBI for creators and builders in Web3. I believe that we need to really think about how we're going to fund the future of culture in this space and what it means to put culture on chain. And that's something that Sursu, myself, and like a lot, Kay Mayfield and other people talk about in various ways. But I really believe we need to preserve the culture of the space and ecosystem. We need to build the infrastructure and put some rebar in the foundation if we want to continue to exist here. But also, how do we fund, and I keep bringing like Ethiopia because I've been talking to some traditional musicians from there and talking about preserving culture on chain in terms of like traditional music. And I use traditional music because folk music and world music are, let's be honest, racist. And so, and so I've been talking to them. They've helped me like work through a lot of my own thinking, but also get deeper into like their heads. And so and also other folks as well. So building this fund, piloting this UBI for creatives is something that I've been working on the frameworks for. And so that's my dream child. And I hope to pump that out, but like at least some kind of pilot or white paper by Q3 of this year. And so I'm working diligently and very hard, and many hours, sleepless nights.
Preserving culture on chain, it's really powerful, right? And I'm sure people who are sort of transitioning into the space are wondering, how is that even possible? What does that even mean? What is Web3 culture even? And how are we preserving these on chain? And maybe at the end of our conversation, you could perhaps share some links or something, how the community can support your project, because I think it's relevant and I'm super interested in it. But how would you define Web3 culture, and what are some of the steps somebody who is just new in the space, what are some of the steps they can take if they're super curious? So where do I start? Or where do they start?
Yes, shout out to Sarkodie and Manifest. So Web3 culture can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but for me, I always talk about the ethos and values of Web3. And so two primary things: sovereignty and ownership. We need to own our own things, and what that looks like, I am open to interpretation and also experiments and co-ownership, experiments and collective ownership, experiments and even individual ownership, and what does ownership actually mean? Because if we look at indigenous folks or folks from the African diaspora, ownership can feel and look very different than the Western world and their very problematic notion of ownership, because we all know how that went. And so big up colonization, but not really. And so I want us to like experiment with what that actually means. Sovereignty. What does it mean to actually stake your claim in this space and really think about how you exist here and how you dictate how your art is used or not used? And so you get to like, this is choose your own adventure, but you're the one in charge of choosing your adventure, not some guy at a big record label. And so at least I believe that that's not how it should be here. And so also transparency. Can we be transparent with each other? Can we go on the blockchain and check out transactions? Tory Lane's like, I sold 1 million NFTs, and my community is like, I don't know about that because I just looked on the blockchain and we don't see anything. And so there's that. And also there's a lot of other things around kind of culture, but I also say like kind of underpinnings of like political like education and bucking up against the system, radical imagination, playfulness. If you look at the rare Pepes, they always are doing like playful things about social commentary or just society in general or themselves, and making fun of crypto culture. And like that playfulness is something that also fuels me and I love. And so, and maybe there are some things that people in your community and the NEWFORUM community or my friends that need to be watching this after, you know, we put it out, that they think that should be infused into like Web3 culture. What I don't think is Web3 culture is these behemoth, like multi-billion-dollar corporations coming in trying to dictate what should exist here and what should not, or big VC money doing the same. And so we as humans in community with each other need to figure this out, and so, and carry the torch. So, yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And thanks for breaking it down and explaining. And so, how would you see the future of Web3 culture? How's it going to evolve maybe in the next 5 years?
I spend as much time as I spend in Web3, literally 90 hours a day. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do envision, I always talk about radical imagination as a lens or like my own crystal ball that I often look through, and what I envision for the space. Like, I always hope, if nothing else, we can hold on to the ethos and value and the culture of the space. However, one of the things I rant about all the time is mass adoption. That's not real. Like I hope in the next 5 years we come to some realization that mass adoption isn't real and it's a fallacy, and we need to actually combat that. We can have sustainable growth, we can onboard people. And I say that as somebody like who's my peers and I, a small group of us on Clubhouse 2 years ago, we're onboarding like 60,000 people and like staying up for 2 or 3 days at night, onboarding people left and right, and are still doing that work to do that in our various like capacities and like things that we do. And so I believe continue to onboard, but like what's happening now is people are offloaded onto the side of the road at a deserted gas station in the middle of the Sahara Desert, or insert desert here, and they don't have directions to kind of navigate. They don't have guides. They don't have somebody to hold their hand. And so they're left vulnerable to safety and security situations. And so, and amongst other things. And so are being what I call fleeced for their wallet. People are cash grabbing them or whatever. And so I hope that we can like really think critically about how we are kind of pushing the space forward and what it means to center community, center the human experience, center, again, I will say all the time, the ethos and values of like Web3, building culture. What does that actually mean? How do we onboard people sustainably that we don't see here yet? And I mean, like, again, like I was talking to these folks from Ethiopia that I love. We have our little chit chats on Zoom, and I'm like, y'all got to come to like Web3. You got to put this, like, you know, we're talking about coffee and like, Ethiopian coffee and like their traditional music and saving some of the musical history that they were kind of like archiving. What does it look like archive our cultures? What does it look like to build Afro-futuristic cultures? And what does it look like to build nation states or network states? What does that look like? And so all these things, all these questions, we don't have to tackle now, but we need to start to push for some collective intelligence and start writing about it, start documenting it, start videoing, start having more conversations like this. And what does that actually look like? And kind of bump our heads together to build and push forth new questions. And I hope that if nothing else, we can do those things.
Yeah, powerful. And I wanted to also ask, you see in terms of like preserving and sort of recording all of, you know, these like distinct, I would say, cultures and music and traditions, would you say that the metaverse has some sort of a role to play in it in terms of Web3, the Web3 evolution, and or like making things more accessible? Because if we can create this world that, like you said, somebody who is in a certain place who might not have a certain kind of access, maybe a metaverse experience could, I don't know where my thoughts are going, but yeah, it just kind of.
Yeah, I know, I see the vision of where you're going. What I will say is that there are places like voxels, BitPixie, I know you're listening. I'm still gonna call it crypto voxels. And so shout out to Ben as well. BitPixie is like a G in like that space, and she's very good people. You can get on your phone and get onto crypto voxels. You can, like, I have a friend Jagar, he taught him, he's been doing incredible 3D stuff for a very long time. However, he taught himself how to build wearables and build incredible like spaces and crypto boxes. Like your mind would be blown at the stuff that you can find there. I'm happy to take anybody in your community on a tour. I love that. It's like my favorite thing. And so you have people building event spaces, you have people building bars, you have people building like libraries, you have people building all kinds of things. And so that can be a cultural space where if you go to the African, I'm gonna butcher this, metaverse museum, something like that, they actually had at one point, I believe, a coffee ceremony. Actually, no, that was Hanifa. I'm sorry, Hanifa. Hanifa Walida, who's an incredible curator. I like loathe her like curation skills. She had an Ethiopian coffee ceremony on the roof of one of her parcels. She did a artist residency, and it was just incredible. And so we have the opportunity to kind of set the tone and like create these scenes to immerse people in these spaces who may not even be able to travel outside of their locale for like whatever reason, whether it's like these horrible passport and travel laws and like restrictions and COVID, whatever. We can transport people into these immersive like virtual spaces with very little tech. You can do it on a phone. However, we can also understand that there are some access needs in terms of like internet and IT infrastructure, and that's being done for a reason. Data, if you've ever been to the continent, especially South Africa, I'm ranting now, data is high as it can be in some places. We need to figure out what does it mean, and I'm probably gonna like, yeah, I'm gonna get myself in trouble, I don't care. Like, what does it mean to actually not democratize? I think it's a horribly problematic word. What does it look like to decentralize access and build IT infrastructure utilizing the power of like Web3 across the diaspora, across the continent? There are some people in the States that don't even have, my friends in Uganda, shout out to Gilbert, always bag on me for horrible internet, and I have the worst internet out of all of them. And so how do we like decentralize this access so that we can bring folks into the metaverse in a way that feels good and actually honors our respective cultures and ways of being, so it's not commodified by people as it often has been. So and it doesn't matter if like hip hop culture from like Ghana or traditional culture from the Central African Republic or insert country here, or 70s Nigerian funk, which I have a particular liking for. And so it doesn't matter, like bring it all. So.
Bring it all. I love that. And I guess one of my last questions would be, what advice would you give to someone who is like interested in getting involved in the space, in the Web3, I'd say, culture scene? Because, you know, you said this is work that you're doing, like onboarding people. So you've kind of heard the different sides of it and their struggles. So what kind of advice would you give?
I would say, I'll give the advice in a second. Onboarding is not work to me. It's an obligation. It's a passion. I feel it's necessary to like shepherd people into this space properly and to make sure that they have somebody to guide them through. And like, I often pass them off to all kinds of people, and so they can meet other folks on their journey, because the people that you meet in this space, for better or for worse, sometimes worse, will shape your experience here. And so my advice would be, find those people. Also, Marie Kondo yourself. What sparks your joy in this space? Is it fashion? Is it film? You might want to talk to like Jordan Bain or all those folks. Is it music? Kane Mayfield and Lil Sleazy, Skrilla, Cas Vegas, Black Dave, Emily Lazar. All these people are like people that I know are onboarding people, and they share the same values, maybe not all the same things, but we're on the same page. So are like, what is your thing? Do you want to build things in the metaverse? Do you want to preserve like an archive culture? What is that thing? And find the people who like are very passionate and like fueled up by that thing that pumps them up and like wakes up. I do not get up in the morning. I literally get up at 6 in the morning all the time. My mom thinks, she's like, what, I can't even get you up in the morning for like high school, like what is going on? But I love this so much. And so find that person who will get up in the morning even though they're not a morning person, and is fueled and pumped up by that thing, and that will be the person that will guide you, that you can always go back to and ask questions, or say, hey, what do you think about this? And to find that person. And the last thing is, do your own research. DYOR. People will say that and not point you in the right direction or anywhere, but do your own research. Vet your sources. Vet the person. Don't get caught up in personality cults. There's a lot of people in Web3 that have a massive amount of people that follow them. Most of them are bots. Have thousands of people in their Twitter spaces, bots, and understand that there are a lot of people who don't have all those things, but they know what they're talking about and they live here. There are no experts. And then lastly, connected to all of this, find the communities where you are given space to like be yourself and your whole self, whether it's Black Web3 or Afropolitan or neighborhood jewelry or blockchain gospel. Like there's so many different communities in this space. Find those communities and make that your home, whatever that looks like. If you need help, I got you. Just find that home, and you'll find other homes too. But if you're first getting here, it's going to help you navigate. So that is it.
Wow, great advice. You're truly, Natalie, you're truly impressive, and you represent community, Web3 diversity, inclusivity, like all of it. And talking about real diversity, and you do have connections in across the world. You're talking about Uganda, you're talking about Ethiopia, you're talking about, it's really impressive. Like, thank you. I'm super honored to be having this conversation with you, and you are truly going to be inspiring a lot of people watching this. I really want to say thank you so much. And where can we find you on your socials?
Y'all can find me wherever the Jollof is, and good music. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm usually in those two places 90 hours a day. Natalie Crue, Natalie, C as in cat, RUE. I am also on Telegram, way too much, posting stuff. And also, yeah, I mostly Twitter, Instagram, not really. I mostly post like wild stories. If you follow me on Instagram, like don't get your hopes up. It's just a bunch of wild stories on there. So, but yeah, catch me on Twitter. Like that's where most of the Web3 community is. Y'all need to be there if you want to be in the space. And so in Clubhouse, we host rooms 9 million times a day. And so feel free to join us. AI, Web3, metaverse, NFTs, all the things. And then lastly, the Global Empowerment Cultural Summit. We host monthly conversations around hip hop culture on different topics, ranging from like social impact to the 50 years of hip hop culture, like anything like that. And so shout out to the whole global team that works on that. And so you can find me in all those places.
Awesome. And we will have all the links in the description below. And thank you all so much for participating in today's forum. If you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. Twitter is NEWFORUM_NCO, and we will have all our links in the description as well. Thank you all again for tuning in today, and I will see you in the next episode.